All right, everyone, welcome to the 33,
Third? Yeah, I think so.
33 Cordav call. So, all right, so looking at the agenda, uh, first, first, is there any announcements anyone wants to make?
Yes,
Yes,
you
go
all
for it,
look
Andre.
wonderful today.
All right,
Oh, Christ.
you too, YouTube. Anyway,
It's a good start. I
uh,
believe Oscar has some additions to the agenda.
yeah, yes. Also, what do you want to add to the agenda, Oscar?
I think it's in the GitHub issue. I can't bring it up right now.
Okay,
right,
I'm
one sec.
seeing Waku V2. Feedback, but probably best async and discuss thread. But looking for clear commitment from the core desktop and Stimbus team on participation. So Waku V2 is the topic. Second is Stimbus. Clear path for devs to write new code in NIM. And the third is clarity on metrics. How do we get daily active user, monthly active user retention measurements? And I'm seeing a possible announcement by Eric. Let's just see what he's here.
All right. Um,
Yeah, it's just that there is a layer 2 solution for status pay that is being discussed. So if anyone is interested in that topic, I think they might want to have a look. That's it. I don't want to take more time of this call. There's lots to discuss.
all right. I do want to go back to that actually. So first, okay. Does everyone agree that we started with Oscar's topics, then the layer 2 thing, and then we go through the specs? Does that sound good for everyone? All right. Okay.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thanks. So, I mean, thanks for breaking the cricket. Then, okay, let's start then. So, Oscar, can you give some intro about this topic on the Waku V2? What are you looking for? Is it you saying you're looking for like commitment, clear commitment?
Yeah, so essentially it's in what's in the discuss thread that I think people have read. What we need is to assemble a team so we can start working on it now with sort of the timelines we have. So the main thing that's missing now is just someone from core, desktop, and Stimbus, and then we can start to have the kickoff call ideally tomorrow or sometime this week. So that's the only blocker. Once it's clear who's committed to speak for core and desktop and Stimbus, then that's it, essentially. So I'm just looking for you and Yuri and Andre to give that. And then if anyone has something else you want to talk about, we can also talk about that. But yeah.
In regards to that, is it better we actually start with the Stimbus stuff first, and from there actually, go to the Waku stuff? Because just now, like, we're integrating desktop and mobile into the name work, and Steambus is supposed to be the first step towards that. So
it's more a matter of there being a stakeholder all in the process,
right.
Because otherwise it's blocked by that. So you just need some person who will be the contact person for that, because that's the first real reason probably why Steambus would be useful at all for the core team, for example. So it's more a matter of the same thing goes for core, and that was something that Andrea brought up, that there should be someone who speaks on behalf of core when it comes to integration to make sure that we capture these issues early and so on. Because otherwise we could be off in our own corner and just do whatever, but that's probably suboptimal because the ultimate use would be core, desktop, and Stimbus. Right. And it doesn't have to be a big commitment initially. It's more a matter of having like some initial integration and that would look very similar to what you guys would be working on for Vacuum already. There wouldn't be much difference.
All right. So I guess this is something we can discuss in the iteration call tomorrow for the kickoff iteration call for Steambot. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it
Sounds
seems
good.
like you would have
Um,
everyone there.
Sorry?
It seems like you would have everyone who would need to have a say or seems to be involved in Waku integration during the Stimbus call tomorrow.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is Waku integration in NIM, right? Not in status Go, right?
Yeah, I like this is a separate effort from Stimbus. I'm not sure if I'll personally be on this Stimbus call. I'm looking to organize a kickoff call for this Vacuum 2, but in order to do that with Dean and Kim and so on, but in order to do that, it has to be clear who the participants are. So that's it. But it is separate from the Stimbus thing. It wouldn't be the same thing because a lot of the work would happen in Vacuum and over LibreDB and so on.
Okay.
All right. Okay. I see them as kind of synergetic. That's why I kind of mixing both a bit. But I don't know. For that, you can count me in, and then I don't know. You can see from desktop who makes more sense to involve depending on the circumstances. All right, then for
So just to clarify, so what does that mean that from you, Andrew? Like it will be clear tomorrow whenever the Stimbus call is who these people will be. Is that the conclusion?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I think I have an idea of who that would be in core already. So
yeah. All right.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so then for the Steambus, there's here, we need to have a clear path for that write new code in NIM. When you say PN server stuff, what does it mean, PN?
push notifications.
Oh, okay. I mean, so for Steambus, we do have like a path. At least we're starting with this shim. This is really the first step. Is it? What do you mean by clear path? Is that not?
I just mean that just something that Andrea brought up, that in order for us to sort of not do double work and do stuff in status Go, it has to be the case that we start to write new stuff in NIM. But it seems like, given Core's timeline constraint, that's not yet possible, and maybe that will be possible once the shim is out. So if there's clarity on that, and future stuff like PM server implementation and so on could be written in NIM once the shim is done, then everything is good. It's just a matter of that being clear as a requirement, and that there's a path for that, and that everyone agrees and is happy about that. Andrea can probably elaborate more on that.
Yeah, I can elaborate if necessary. So basically, it's very simple. So I'm working on the push notification server, right? So ideally, we don't write any new code in status Go, right? That would be the ideal, because if we're going to move away from status Go, then that's obviously writing new code is not going to help. We're going to have to rewrite that code eventually. So what ideally, Nimbus provides a way for me not to have to write status Go code and to seamlessly write new code and somehow integrate it. Now, for example, to make a simple example, the client is very difficult to write in NIM. That would be technically very challenging because it is very much involved in your keys, your contacts, and so on and so forth. The server is slightly easier, but the simplest scenario, we do use the double ratchet encryption, for example, because we want to have PFS between the messages exchanged between the server and the client. How do I do that? Essentially, if I write NIM code, then I would need, either I've got a NIM library that re-implements PFS, which obviously is not feasible in a reasonable timeline for the push notification server. But or like I have another way essentially. And so that's a way. Like if there's clarity over these, then I can start doing that. Otherwise, I will have to write code in status code essentially.
Okay, so I mean, for example, for the stuff where the keys would be acceptable that we could, for example, sign in status go and make, we build the messages protocol and all that in NIM and then sign it in status go, and then when that is ready, we can actually move on the accounts. Would that kind of like approach half would be not half, but like steadily we move things over, be like acceptable?
It depends. I mean, if you want to surface everything, like you want to get, I mean, like it's difficult to figure it out how it would work, but just roughly speaking, that would be making fairly big changes to the status go code base. Something that doesn't seem like we might want to do essentially. Like that's just, it's more about like I've got this library in NIM, I surface the encryption message, but then I have to send it through, I have to pass it back in Go because we're using Waco, in status Go at the moment, right? So I need to have it in NIM, get some stuff from status Go, pass it back for status Go. So it requires a bit of shuffling things around, which it might be what we want to do, but it's definitely, it might be adding a bit of a toll of I mean,
yeah. I mean, for me, it's a bit hard to talk about that because I just don't know what are the challenges with that, and I think we're going to find out with the shim exactly how easy or hard it is in the first place to communicate between the two. And for me, like that's the first step before even thinking about those things. So I don't know. So I suggest we go ahead with the shim, and then based on that and what we learn, we can think more about that stuff. That's just my suggestion.
I keep working on the push notification service as I need. Like I probably will see what comes first, and but in the meantime, I will implement as I go into status go. But just keeping up to date in any changes, if the path is clear, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We do need to ship that. So if we duplicate a little bit of work now, it's better than to wait to ship things based on uncertainty. Sounds like a good idea, Andrea.
I agree. All right. Then the next topic is about the matrix. That's an interesting one. So I guess there's different opinions on what actually accurately measures an active user, a daily active user. So, well, who wants to start on that? Is it Jacob?
Well, the way we count it right now is just by essentially taking the peer IDs of nodes connected to our nodes and just counting the unique number of them in a specific time slice, and that's it. But the problem with that is we don't actually discriminate between different types of nodes right now. So the counts include things like end-to-end tests and some other smaller, not that relevant counts like bridges or bots, whatever. That's not that much. But the end-to-end tests probably skew things by quite a bit. That's probably noticeable. And also the way that we store the data is just as logs, so it's not easy to query that right now.
I mean, so what we need is basically we need something that we use as source of truth for daily active users and for retention. There's topic on Discuss that proposes what those are, building on what Jacob and others have been working on. I don't think we're gonna, in terms of messaging, we're not gonna get much better than unique Whisper peers. The main thing is ensuring that they are unique, which it should be, and then getting rid of the test traffic and so on to the extent it's possible. One specific detail there that we have to figure out is when it comes to end-to-end testing, because it's not clear what the impact of them are, and if we remove them, for example, by changing status fleet, that might have an impact on QA and the core app. So that's something that would be good to have a decision on. If we are fine moving that to a staging fleet, or if there's some other way we can solve that.
Yeah, so there used to be some pushback on changing the fleet that we use for end-to-end tests, because Test team always said we want to use exactly what is on prod fleet. But the thing is, that's the point of the staging fleet. Staging fleet is what prod will use before it uses it, right? So unless you consciously, I guess, change it to something newer, then yeah, staging fleet is pretty much always the same thing as prod. But I understand the reservation, because it is more practical to just test on the production fleet, which is used by everyone else. It's more resilient, I guess, to any kind of mistakes.
I don't know if it's too complex or even feasible, but could we collect from the logs of the end-to-end test the Whisper peer ID and then collect these and then remove them from the matrix?
Definitely not in Kibana. It would require some kind of custom implemented solution to essentially do queries and then remove the stuff ourselves. I don't see how that would work. Not easily. I'm sure it's doable. Just the amount of work to make that happen would probably be noticeable.
Because, for instance, it could be. Would it be feasible and simpler if it was like a script that runs every 24 hours and remove? So we know that the last 24 hours are including end-to-end test, and then it's removed from Kibana, or is Kibana aggregating directly and therefore?
No, but listen, you would have to have like essentially a set of data for every day or every time series really that you're calculating, because it's not always days. Sometimes you do months, right? So you have to have, for example, separate indices that would hold the data about the peers used by end-to-end tests, and whenever you query peers from the logs of prod fleet, we also have to subtract the peers for every single time slice for that given query from the list of peer IDs used by end-to-end tests. That's definitely not doable in Kibana as it is right now. It would have to be essentially a solution written from ground up.
So why are we not considering having staging separate from production?
I think it's a good idea, but last time I proposed it, I was shouted down, so I just gave up.
I mean, so
is anyone against that in this call?
I believe that staging. I mean, it doesn't have to be like 50 nodes like production. 50 is but if it's running the same version as prod.
Well, it's runs the same version pretty much always, except when we upgrade stuff. Then we upgrade the staging fleet first, and then prod, right?
Yeah, that's what that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, we just need to be a bit more careful with the process. That's all. Like now there's not like a good process. Like like I upgrade staging, and until it's out, staging will stay the same. So you don't want to run PRs of unrelated code against staging at that point, right? Because they might not have the necessary upgraded version of status code to speak to the staging. So we're actually, we're using it for two different purposes,
right?
At this point. So we just need to be a bit more careful with what is running, and so on and so forth.
Yes, precisely. So if we use staging just, as I said, for staging, and we don't test code because that's what the test fleet is for, then the time when it's different should be minimal. But yeah, it would probably still be noticeable. The alternative is to essentially modify status go logs to also include names of peers and filter that in Elasticsearch, and then use that in the queries to limit which ones. But then you have to indicate which ones are end-to-end builds for for the tests, and that is not indicated by the name of the node because that's always status IM for all mobile nodes. So you have to essentially build a custom status Go version with a different name or the modified version to detect end-to-end nodes. That's another possibility, but changing the fleet to staging is the simplest thing, and just do it right. We already have a PR that would just work.
All right, so again, just to reemphasize, any objections to doing the staging fleet?
Not from me.
No.
I'm not seeing anyone of QA on the call. I'm guessing they would at least need to be informed.
Yeah, I'll let them know.
Exactly. I mean, I included them in the PR that I proposed. I can post it in the chat, but yeah, we definitely need to talk with the team about this.
So I guess the other outside of end-to-end tests, I guess it's a question of if everyone or the people who might have some opinion on this agree that the current methodology makes sense. It sounds as so. What I mean by that is that right now we're looking at eProd, and then it's checking processing requests. So any sort of node that's processing requests, and then it's doing a unique on the PID, and that's what's showing up as DAU. And right now that's around 4,000, which seems a bit high, but maybe that's all accounted for when it comes to end-to-end tests and so on. But do people have any other reasons to doubt the accuracy of that data?
Well, I gotta say, I find it surprising. I'm happy to hear it, but I find it surprising somewhat, given activity on the channels. But it might might be private channels, private chats. I mean, it's very hard to tell.
Exactly. We don't really know what other public channels there are that people use.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What we do know is that there's 50 concurrent connections ish. So I don't know if people have any thoughts on if that seems reasonable to have 4,000 active users a day with 50 concurrent connections, or given the traffic they see or downloads or anything else, right? It seems high to me, but maybe.
That's the connected peers, right? I thought there was around between 100 and 120.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's higher now. Sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, right now it's more like 80 and 100. But yeah, like connected peers are at the 30-second slice at the specific second that the metric is pulled. That's the connected peers, and mobile nodes go up and down all the time, right? So that count itself is not useful in terms of knowing how many people actually have been using the app within, for example, an hour slice. Just know that at the moment, these many devices are connected to the given mail server. So that's not a useful count, other than, for example, saying, yeah, we have 50 other types of peers that we might want to subtract from the 3,000. That's about it.
So another thing that I noticed in the metrics is that mid-March, we saw a huge spike in terms of the metric we use for DAUs. So is there a marketing or product reason why we see a spike? Or can this be attributed to some change in end-to-end testing or any other change that's happened?
Dark mode.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, that was right after the dark mode.
It was the dark mode in one, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely some marketing pushes going on. Johnny and the team are working really hard to bring users into the platform and doing growth.
Yeah, but we're talking about.
And this was around 1.1 release.
3 months ago, which is 3 months ago.
After every release, they do a huge push.
Was that 17th of March, by any chance?
Yeah, around there.
Yeah, because I noticed on DepPS, on the Phantom stats, that there's a huge spike that day. I mean, usually it's like 700 or something. That day was 10 times more.
Let me
okay,
check
cool. So then it makes sense. I just want to make sure it makes sense then, but that's a natural explanation. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Something happened there that caused a huge spike. Yeah.
Yeah, but we definitely want to exclude end-to-end tests because the impact of those might be actually quite big. because I assume every end-to-end test is a separate installation with separate installation ID, which gives you a new enode. So that probably would be noticeable in stats.
Maybe because we spin up maybe 2 accounts as well. So
Sorry?
we spin up 2 accounts.
Accounts don't matter.
No, like 2 mobile devices. Sorry.
Oh, you mean 2 devices that talk to one another? Okay, yeah, then yes, they will have different PRIDs and they would be counted as separate. So yeah, each test would be 2 nodes actually.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So those numbers could be quite skewed by end-to-end. That's for sure.
All right.
Cool. And then the other metric, so assuming that's fine, then the other metric is sort of retention or stickiness. I suggest that we start very basic with stickiness metric, which is just DAU versus divided by MAU before going into retention curves and so on. I think to make that nice, Jacob added some graphics for that in the metrics on the metrics URL. But it would be
not the metrics
nice
one, just in Grafana. I haven't made that public yet, and also it doesn't really work that well because it wants to count it every 30 days, so it's not really a nice graph.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to make that nice. Maybe someone here has a bunch of experience with Elasticsearch or Kibana and can like make that look nice. I have some ideas for.
I could do Splunk all day, but I'll have to look at Kibana. I know Splunk has really good stuff that does this. Maybe Kibana does too. I'll look.
Is it readable the way it is? What would be the objective in making it nice?
Well, it's right now it's not. So for example, there's a line and then that ends like 3 weeks ago, and then that line is looking back a month ago. So it's not very it's lagging. It's not very actionable, and it's not really changing per DAU. It's changing per month, and it's not up to date with the latest date. So it's just not as actionable or not as nice as it could be. It doesn't have to be pretty, but just it should be accurate. So ideally, it would take the MAU for the rolling 30-day previous window and then divide that by the DAU divided by that. So you will get an updated per each version and so on. And right now, it doesn't look like that at all. So it's kind of a bit too coarse, I think.
Got it. Thanks. I didn't want to add.
Yeah, good.
No, just one note because it bugs me. I do want to be accurate about the fact that we're going after a proxy of retention and not retention, because we're not comparing individual users over time. And that could be misconstrued if we just describe it as retention. And it also leads us to think that the data is different than it actually is.
I agree, and that points out 2 other efforts that we have to do. So this is measuring like stickiness, and it's not a proper cohort analysis or something. So that's something that I think we should do, but first we need to get the basics done. I agree with that. The other point with that is that we need to have clear documentation, both for ourselves, but also for marketing and fundraising and performance marketing and so on. So we need to be clear about what methodology we're using and what issues it might have in terms of using it as a proxy measure. So those are the 2 other kind of to-dos, as I agree.
All right. Anything else on this topic?
Is there someone who can help out with some of this outside of Jacob?
I would love to have a look. Definitely. I mean, doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I don't think this is doable with Elasticsearch by itself, or not in the format that it has right now. So we have to think of a different way of storing the data about peers that connect to us to query it properly, or even use a different database for metrics like in IndexedDB or whatever else is there. Because the way it is stored right now, it's just not easily queryable. So the problem isn't just we need a nice way to query it. We need to find a way to store the data in such a way that it's easier to query. That's I would say the main problem.
Another potential idea is to just output a log somewhere and then write the Python script that can be run as just regularly and just spit out the map like a Python matplotlib image, right? That would be another way of attacking it that doesn't require all this extra tooling and stuff.
Well, if you just want, I guess, images, then yes, you could write a custom solution in something like Python that would query Elasticsearch and periodically create graphs. I don't know how much that work that would be, but yeah, definitely one of the possibilities.
All right.
Any other thoughts on this type of metrics? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, any other thoughts on growth metrics or retention, how we can make them nice as quickly as possible, so we can have them be actionable and useful over the next few months?
Guess not.
Yeah, just thinking, I also put it on discuss, but other metrics or data points that we can look at is use of dApps and transaction volume. Also just like proxies, and they're not necessarily proxies for retention either.
Well, same as Infura, which is also kind of a proxy for usage, but then we don't know what would be the difference between different kind of peers having different, well, how heavy their usage is between different peers, right? So it's hard to estimate from that general app usage.
Yeah, it would be. So one thing, this is probably like a critical flaw for me to understand, is peer connectivity. Say if someone installs Status on boards but never sends a message or joins a public chat, would they not be counted at all, or are they still a node in, let's say, the peer IDs that we are keeping track of?
Well, that would entirely depend on whether the node is started and connects, even if you don't connect to any public chat or anything like that. I think it does. And if it does, then it is counted, even if you didn't connect to any public chat or didn't talk to anyone.
Okay, that would be good to know, like to know for sure if what we are counting as daily active users includes also users that do not use chat, or if there are potentially users that do not use the chat functionality, but only the browser or wallet.
So that would be the question to Core. If the app is started and no chat is open, no public chat, no one-to-one chat, no actions in the chat are done, does the node start? And if it does it do any like generic startup requests, or does not? Because if it makes no request but just connects, then it probably wouldn't show up in the statistics, because we look at specifically a log message that says something like processing request. So if there is no requests, it wouldn't show up in metrics.
All right. Anything else on this topic?
Does anyone from Core? Can anyone from Core answer that question?
I guess we would have to check. Because the question is really, is it when the node starts, does it do any initial requests? If it makes no requests, then nothing in statistics. We don't count connected peers.
So Ricardo is asking if there's any privacy concerns in regards to this.
I don't think we want to track anything that we're not tracking anything new. We just want to use that information better. And the way that we're talking about aggregating things, it'll be re-anonymized anyways.
Are we tracking anything that cannot?
This is all black box. Yeah, this
Right.
is all black box. Anyone running a node could in theory do this. The main difference is that we're running a cluster, so we are more likely to get a better view. But in theory, if someone is connected to a node, not connected to a cluster, then they would be able to get the same kind of metrics.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's no
That's pretty much a peer-to-peer
analytics
thing,
the
right?
app itself.
Yeah, If you have a peer-to-peer network, you have to identify peers somehow. So they would have to have some kind of ID. And yeah, that's what we use, the ID of the peer.
I mean, I think it's great because that means any claims we do can actually be independently verified, right? Unlike some closed platforms. So anyway.
Yeah. So can someone from Core follow up on that, so we have clarity on exactly when the node is started and what that implies for the DAU metric?
I'll follow up on it.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. So then, all right, moving on to the next topic. So there's a possible announcement regarding a layer 2 solution for Status Pay. Eric, what is the announcement?
But I already mentioned it. I already said it earlier. It's just that there is currently decision that has been made for the L2 solutions used for Status Pay, and if some people are interested in this topic, they can chime in. That's all.
So to clarify something, by Status Pay, you mean what do you mean by Status Pay? Just so everyone's
it's a payment network that will be used. Yeah, and so the idea was to decide what L2 solution, layer 2 solution to use in order to have faster, cheaper transactions.
I'm interested.
Yeah, and what is the current solution being looked at or most promising?
It seems like it's going for optimistic rollups.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, is there anyone want to discuss this in this call, or it's more for just information purposes? I'm personally glad you're going with optimistic rollups, as that's one of the most promising solutions. So I was worried it was going to be a sidechain or something like that, which nowadays, I don't know. Like rollups are a very, very good solution for this thing now.
Yeah, there was also ZK rollups and payment channels, but payment channels have too much of onboarding cost, and it mobilizes capital so it wasn't that good. Yeah, and it's going in the direction of optimistic rollups because there is more chances that it's ready to use in a shorter term. But on paper, there's a lot of things to like about ZK rollups.
Could we schedule a call to discuss, because I've got a number of user retention features that could use a separate payment channel. Well, we've kind of discussed rating before, but if we're going for optimistic rollups, then that would be better than sidechain.
Sorry.
So can we schedule a call to this? Because I don't think it probably is out of the scope of the dev call. Like the specific implementations of this, or which issues we've currently got at the moment. But I would like to continue to discuss it.
Yeah, we can discuss after this call if you want.
Okay. Yes.
Can I ask how prioritized this is for Core in terms of growth and retention? Obviously, it's nice to have low transaction costs, but do we think this will significantly impact those metrics in the medium term, or is this something for later?
So it's related.
If I can answer, because I've thought about that, but it depends if you consider that what will bring user retention first is chat or the side features related to the wallet. So if the wallet has nothing to do with user retention, then it won't help. But on the other hand, for instance, I don't know, on personal experience, I've stopped using the Kudos DApp, for instance, because I'm too lazy to refill my gas on my accounts.
Maybe to add to that, because it's an important question. If anything does not focus on acquisition and retention right now, it shouldn't. It should be time boxed. It doesn't mean like it can't happen, but it should be time boxed. The reason I would think it makes sense to spend at least some time in understanding what solution the KeyCard team is looking at for Status Pay, because that's where this originates, and whether it can be used, is the fact that you pay close to $3 to register a username right now. Like, to me, any way we can solve that, and any way we can introduce SNT reactions, which is a differentiator compared to other messaging apps that you can that easily send each other crypto or kudos or whatever it is of worth in a messaging app. Those are very powerful, especially in the Latin American market.
But I would argue that if you want user retention in the short term to solve these problems, the solution would rather be to let users define a username that wouldn't have the same status as a ENS name, but at least because we send the username, the ENS name in each message anyway, and we validate it, we check on chain that it is correct, right? But if you want to trade off SNT utility for user retention, you could just let user define their username like this. And that would be a much more, it would be super easy to do in the very short term, and there is no uncertainty about whether it will succeed or not. And then there is, what was the other one? SNT reaction. Well, the first step would be to have emoji reactions before it's SNT reactions. And both are like much shorter term than all the whatever uncertainties we have with using a side chain, a layer 2 solution to make transactions cheaper and faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. It's definitely, I wouldn't consider like a layer 2 solution urgent for efficiency's sake. If the KeyCard team is working on it, it helps to keep track of the solution they're choosing, to understand if it can be used for Status Mobile. And yeah, there might be other solutions to kind of the having to pay for a username, which could definitely be a blocker because it's such a hygiene feature. I think you make a good point that it's a trade-off between SNT utility and retention. I don't think we want to reduce SNT utility any more than we have by kind of nullifying the work that was done on Tribute to Talk. So I don't really see it as an option to remove SNT utility from the username, also because of the uniqueness that ENS names add.
Well, we're not talking about removing it, but we're talking about diluting it by so you know it's the same for many pay to win games where you have a slight. There's a little bit more when you pay ENS name. Like in this case, it looks better.
Right, but in our case, wouldn't that open a lot of ways for people to do phishing? Because, well, we can say, oh, well, here's a warning icon saying this person doesn't have a verified ENS name, but people don't care. They don't look at stuff like that. It will just make it easier to fish stuff.
Yeah, that would be potential. So it wouldn't replace the 3 names. So that could be a solution. Like if the user doesn't have an ENS name, you still see the 3 random name plus the name they want to be called with or whatever. But just to go back to like more features for user retention. So you mentioned the SMT reaction and tribute to talk, and for those, I think that they won't bring any user retention if they are done with the mainnet high cost and slow transactions, because like we had tribute to talk until we switched to multi-account, and it was quite annoying that the way the feature works, you cannot talk until your transaction is done. So first you have to open a chat, do the transaction, and now you add to that the fact that you need to ask the wallet address first. Well, not if it's an ENS name, but anyway, there is that. And for SMT reaction, it's for something as simple as making a reaction, you would hope for a ease of use, not having to do a transaction and then make sure it works and so on. And also, if we're talking about sending one SNT as a reaction, can you imagine sending one SNT and paying the equivalent of 20 SNT just for the gas transaction? So it's
So in terms of the original topic with layer 2 and core and so on, there's 3 things I would probably do before going further with that. One is in terms of doing due diligence, and it seems like that's been done to a large extent already, but also making sure that there's like security audits and all these kinds of things, which I assume is something that the keycard team would look into. The second thing I would look at is in terms of understanding how big of a bottleneck like gas prices are, if it's a temporary phenomenon or if it's something that will keep going. We have reason to believe will keep going for a longer period of time. And the third is I would look at the specific use demographics we're talking about, because I wouldn't, for me, the difference between having no crypto and having some crypto is the big one. If I have $10 in crypto, I wouldn't have a problem paying $3 for Enis using it, even though the gas costs are out of whack. It's true, I probably wouldn't use something like the Kudos app regularly, but is that a big driver in terms of retention for our user base? I'm not sure. If we're talking about Latin America, it would be useful to have some backed up theory for why this would matter in terms of maybe our users, the demographic we're targeting with our campaigns and so on, our users where are more price sensitive, where this would make a big difference. If that's the case, then that would make a stronger argument for reducing gas costs with the layer 2 solution. Those are three things I would do before going any further in terms of technical implementation details or anything else.
All right. So regarding this, is there like an action point? Is the action point to do a call, to create a call to discuss this, or some people will discuss it?
Well, no, I think the Status Pay team anyway is going on their own direction. They have a partnership with LibDAO, and the decision to go with Optimistic Rollups was made this morning in a call, and they will. And I think most of the work will be done by LibDAO, which will provide which will end out a prototype environment for the keycard team to play with and see if they can make everything work. So from the core perspective, it was more of an interest in what solution they are going to use to see if we can reuse for features that could improve user retention, such like Esther mentioned, the SNT reactions and tribute to talk in particular, because instant transactions, I think, like Oscar said, it would need to be verified, I think are important.
All right. Yeah, the keycard did look at a lot of different solutions before arriving at this conclusion. I think on this, the comment I have is that when looking at different solutions out there, to be careful about what actually works or not, because there's sometimes a lot of claims being made, but then when things are tried, they don't actually work, or they have some massive trade-off that is not really advertised.
And I think that's why they chose Optimistic Rollups, because like ZK Rollups, if you listen to Alex, the developer, for ZK Sync. It seemed super nice. Everything was possible and all, but I guess the fear is that it's not as shiny as it sounds, and optimistic rollups are simpler mathematically. Yeah.
All right, then now moving to the next topic. Well, actually, are we done with this? Anyone want to add anything else? Going one.
I think it's worth to especially if we don't have really real pressure on implementing a payment solution. I think it's worth to kind of wait and see a little bit, especially in optimistic rollups, if we want to use it. Reasoning is I've read some posts that are still kind of questioning the security model, and I would rather not bet on something which ends up being a second Plasma.
Yeah, I also in regard to the security model, I guess it depends a lot also what is the level they're talking about, because sometimes it's the scenarios that you need like massive, I mean like really massive minor manipulation to happen,
Yeah.
or scenarios that are a bit far-fetched. It makes sense to analyze them, but for our use case it might be okay.
Yeah, also, I doubt that the libDAO team already implemented all the decentralization mechanisms. So it might be that Status is running a validator. So we are publishing correct block all the time. So there is no risk of a bad block. But
I mean, I also get the part about like not having too far-fetched like models in mind here. But the thing is, like if I look at what happened in Plasma, if someone invested some level of resources into this, they would be wasted, like looking at it from today. And I think it's especially given that we want to work on increasing our user numbers, I would just go for, okay, we have something better to do and can also like sit back a little and wait to see if the project actually matures, or if they face some issues.
I think the
ahead.
problem is that Guy-Louis said that we actually want something to be built soon, within 3-5 months. I mean, to me, even for optimistic rollups, even if libDAO are some kind of solution ready, it sounds a bit optimistic. But I guess it's optimistic rollups, so yeah.
Right.
That might be why they went for that.
Perfect way to put it.
All right. So then the next on the agenda was, just to review the action items. Stuff that was done includes discuss post on iOS notifications and set up a call for SteamBus. Then other ones, Esther, that was follow up with core and contingency plan in case of a ban.
I posted on Discuss. That's
All
it
right.
while Corey's out and just waiting for him to get back and pick that up.
And Tobias had create issue to re-resolve ENS name.
I actually did not do that. Can you send me over whatever you have written down there? Probably slipped through it. There was a lot of things happening last week.
Yeah, it's in this notes and on the last page.
Okay.
On the last page, on the bottom. That's
no,
where
I just have to find my in-memory notes to remember what it was. But yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do.
So section 4 specs review. That was, I think, the last line on the notes. All right, then. We're approaching the 1 hour mark. I don't know if you guys want to continue. Want to continue the next call? You want to do
events? So
yeah.
I'll catch you guys later.
All right. So what you guys want then? So continue the next dev call, or we do a meeting about the last meeting?
I think it makes sense to continue a bit. Like I don't know exactly what's left on the agenda, but yeah,
Okay.
this taking a bit longer than 1 hour seems fair considering it's every other week.
All right. So part of it, I guess. Okay. So it says specs reviews, 2 specs, and then there's the spec exchange of proposals, which includes SteamBus, Waku version 2 feedback on that. And then layer 2 solutions. We kind of discussed that already. And there was something else about the notifications. So I mean, the specs. First of all, there was this Audi one, and
I guess maybe it makes sense to ask if someone is blocked on the specs, or if there's something that should be discussed for the specs without going through them in detail.
Yeah, I agree. So regarding the audio
Andrea,
messages, any blockers, any comments?
Not on audio, nor on push notifications. So I'm in contact with the developer who's working on audio. There are some changes to the specs that needs to be made, but I'm waiting for for things to settle down before making those changes. But they're minimal.
All right, and then for the other spec, which is it? Address feedback. I mean, the actual title is add encrypted access tokens. So regarding that, any blockers, any comments?
No,
I'm gonna have a look at it.
Yeah, it's a significant change. So if people want to have a look.
What do you have concerns about, Andrea, about this change?
Not myself. I made a change, so I'm okay. There's always the issue, like the main issue with these things is spam, but spam is not addressed by the main app, and it won't be addressed by the push notification service. So essentially, like any spam prevention mechanism would be very bland. That's all.
All right. I was having to read, but I personally I don't have feedback on this. Anyone has feedback on this currently?
I think no. People can feedback offline. I think it's totally fine.
Okay. All right. Cool. Then okay. The other one is packet chaining proposals. So SteamBus, there is that issue, which is the shim. So we partially already discussed this early in the call. I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at the issue that proposes how to go about this, which is essentially to implement the shim, and it has some details of how this could be accomplished. Are there like any comments on this, or I don't know, like objections, suggestions?
I mean, I've already said that. I think it's worth taking into consideration because we're using exactly the opposite method that Pedro used. So we're shimming stuff, and so at least, I think it's worth taking into consideration what Pedro has done and displaying why we're not following that path and so on and so forth. I mean, just to recap, Pedro managed to get Whisper running from Nimbus in Status React with some bugs and stuff like that, I think. But he was able to send public messages, I think, in the chat using the Status React app.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, Pedro's approach, you mean to go the other way around, right? To integrate status go into status go.
So basically, right. It was like allowing Nim to be within status go and then take it from there to start from the bottom rather than the top.
Right. I think like I think that's like a potential valid approach. I think it was discussed in the call. Or at least I remember Jacek saying something about that. It's not necessary. We don't necessarily need to go like we don't necessarily need to exclude that. Although it'd be a bit weird, I guess. But we can. No, it's possible still to go with that approach, even with the shim. It would be a bit strange, I guess, because you have talking to nym, which talks to status go, which talks to nym. But I don't know, if we see it makes sense, we could definitely consider that approach.
Yeah, so I think it's worth having the two in mind, and then you make a decision, just so that we are aware of all the options.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, next would be the Waku. Just SteamBus. Just to clarify, like, so everyone is on the same page. So there's the SteamBus channel that you can follow the updates on SteamBus. There's a call tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern time, and this call it's an iteration meeting. So people are gonna be developing are gonna be in that call, and any like relevant stakeholders. If you want to be on a call, you're welcome. So there's the details. You can find it on the channel, including what time and what is the link that you need to go to attend the call if you want to. All right. So before we move to Waku, is there any more questions or comments about this? Going once, twice. All right. Then yeah, regarding the Waku version 2 feedback. Any comments on this? Or is it better offline? Or like Oscar, is there any particular things you're looking to know? Like
no, I think, I mean, in terms of feedback, like I've asked a lot of people in private and so on already, and there's also discussed threads, so people could post there if there's something in particular that's not covered. The main thing that's blocking, as I said before, is just resources, so it's clear, so we can start to kick off and work towards the first track, which is getting the libp2p version going. So the sooner we can get that, the better. So if we have the call tomorrow and then it's clear who the people are, then we can have the kickoff on Thursday, for example, where the people who will be involved will sort of cut it up into individual pieces and something that can be achieved fairly quickly, I think. Track one.
In regards to the protocol itself, is that like now kind of like well defined, or are you looking for feedback? Is it still in flux? Or
so I mean, the Waku v1 is very well defined. Obviously, if there are specific things that we want to change, you can create issues and so on, and we can iterate on that way. In terms of Waku v2, I think initially the target is to port it to sort of libp2p, and that will look essentially the same initially with some changes because it's running on libp2p and the pub/sub interface is different. But yeah, I mean, that will be an issue, and other people can comment on that design and so on. You can also do that in Discuss thread already, but a specific drops PR for specs will probably not come until next week, I would think. But the initial step will be a fairly naive translation with some minor modifications, and then after that, sort of larger things. But yeah, definitely feel free to post ideas in the Discuss thread or in the upcoming issues.
all right, sounds good. Then, all right, next topic we already discussed, I believe, was layer 2 solutions to remove gas cost barrier for in-status SNT transactions. That was already discussed. Am I right, or is this something else?
I think that was discussed.
Yeah, that's already discussed.
All right. Okay. Cool. And then finally, notifications on iOS, progress, decisions, and decisions that have been made. So, who will do the update on this? Is it Andrea?
I can. I mean, the spec is out, so anyone can check what the current state is. I started the implementation. I can give a brief overview of the implementation. I don't know if people are interested or not, but up to you guys.
Yeah, for context, reason I put it on the agenda was, and like, up to you to what extent you want to discuss it, I really don't know. But I know there was a long discussed thread with different options, upon which there was a conclusion, and spec and implementation was based on that. So my thinking was, yes, it's helpful for everyone who did not follow closely to understand what the current status is and if any decisions were made.
Yeah, so like in terms of decision, anything can change because obviously like we're still in the middle. If it changes now, it's better than if it changes in a week. Obviously, if someone has some feedback to give, now is the right time because I started the implementation. There's going to be some servers. Like we're going to go for GoRush as a push notification server, so like vanilla unchanged, and then these like middle push notification server will take care of actually dispatching notification to GoRush. They can be basically queried anonymously for people. And so basically they use an access token, so it increases the liability. So you're not saying, I am user X, I want to send a notification to user Y. And essentially, like the way we do this is that there are two modes. One is using, allowing only from contacts, which is the most secure and the most anonymous. And then there's another mode that's free for everyone, which anyone can do. And like if it's free for everyone, it's actually quite okay. Basically, the way we achieve this is by essentially like encrypting this token for each contact that you have, and then they pull the encrypted version of the token and they check that they can decrypt this token, whether there's one token for them. This is in contact if you're on the other contact. This is the same way that Whisper works. Which is identical, and they use that token. So that the server does not know actually whether you're allowing this user to send the push notification to you, and the other way you can just get these token, these encrypted devices without revealing your identity because it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so that's pretty much it.
All right. We're done. Jen, Nicole, and any other issues or things anyone wants to bring up or talk about?
Yeah, I have one thing. It's actually a quick announcement. Like for Ethereum 2, there was a shared testnet launched right now with 4 other clients. And Nimbus participated successfully, so we're part of the sort of Altona Genesis launch, and we have a whole bunch of validators running up on the network. So big congratulations to the entire Nimbus team. They've done a great work. They were just hacking all weekend to get this thing up and running. And it worked. Very nice.
Nice.
Awesome. Congrats.
Cool.
Yeah, congrats. Yeah, awesome. All right, and any other business? No. All right, guys. Have a wonderful rest of the week. All right.
Likewise. Thank you, Yuri.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.